All right, what is up? This is the first and inaugural version, video, podcast, whatever you want to call it. This is the inaugural version of All Mormons Eat Jello. This is where we take the gospel seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And the genesis of this, and I'll get into this more in later ones, but the genesis of this was I have a friend who's a non-member, and he one time was teasing me and was like, oh, I thought every Mormon ate Jello. And so I was like, man, it would be so cool to have a site called All Mormons Eat Jello. So I immediately went and bought the domain, and that's where we're at here. And then I was sitting and watching conference yesterday, and man, what an amazing conference. And we're going to get into that here in a second. Some of the things that stuck out to me, and obviously the big changes that we hear coming up. But I started thinking, man, what a cool thing to do something where we kind of recap every week the things happening in LDS, the LDS church and LDS culture, because we don't want to take ourselves too seriously. So here's the idea. It's going to be a quick hitter. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Sometimes I'm going to have some friends on maybe, but essentially we're going to go through a few things. We're going to talk about church news. We're just going to hit it real quick. You can always go to mormonnewsroom.org or lds.org or mormon.org and get more information about it. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've probably already heard most of it, but we will definitely have links to all of that. The next thing is Mormons in the news. If we hear of any LDS people in the news or the church in the news for whatever reason, we'll hit that real quick. Sometimes it'll be funny, sometimes it'll be pop culture, sometimes it might be more serious, but we're going to hit that. Then we're going to do the best of hashtag Twitter steak. So if you're on Twitter, you know that there are some really, really funny LDS people on Twitter, and we're gonna hit up some of the best tweets that we find. And of course, if you see any, please share them with us. And we'd love to share those on here as well. Now, granted, with LDS conference, with general conference, there's a ton of tweets, and there's no way that we could hit them all. But I hope by sharing a few of these and sharing a few people that you can follow that are funny, that you'll be able to find some humor and find some funny things to lighten your day with regards to the gospel. And then finally, we will have a brought to you by, and by brought to you by, it's not necessarily somebody that's sponsoring. As a matter of fact, it's probably not somebody that's sponsoring the show. It's just something that we want to share with you that we think is really important. And I was trying to think, it's like brought to you by, not in the sponsorship type way, but more in a your elders quorum got picked to set up the chairs for the ward barbecue type thing, where you just kind of got volunteered, and that's what we're doing. We're volunteering these resources and tools and people and websites and whatever else we find that we think you will find value in. We're going to share those with you. So maybe it's not brought to you by, maybe it's just a featured resource or tool or podcast. So, and then as we get going and we get more people, we will have a mailbag. So if there's something that you want to share or something you think is important or funny or interesting, we'd definitely love to have you bring that in. So without further ado, let's jump right in, and we're going to start with church news. And there was a lot of news this weekend. So a couple things that I picked up on, a couple things that I wanted to share real quickly was, first off, the Solemn Assembly. This was awesome. It was so spiritual. It was so neat. You know, my family and I, my wife and my kids, we watched it at our house. So we weren't in a stake center. We weren't anywhere. We watched it in our house, but we had our kids come in. My daughter's 9. My son's 5. And then I have a baby that's 8 months old. He obviously did not participate very much. But it was cool to sit there and to watch the Solemn Assembly, to watch the First Presidency stand up and to sustain themselves, you know, to sustain President Nelson and then to sustain the counselors, and to see the emotion and to really watch. And there's some tweets there's a tweet I'll share. But this is the second time that I've had an opportunity to see this. I joined the church when I was in 2003. So President Hinckley was the prophet when I became a member, and then I just returned home from my mission when President Monson was called. So this is only the second time, and I'm much more mature at this point than I was when President Monson was called. And it was really neat to sit down with my family and to be able to stand up and have my kids see me stand up as the only person in the room to stand up when they asked the high priest and the elders to stand up and sustain the First Presidency. It was cool to have them see that, and then to have our whole family stand up in our living room and to sustain the prophet. And that was just a really, really neat experience. And to see the tears in President Nelson's eyes and to really see the mantle upon him. I've always loved him as a speaker. I've always loved his stories. But there's something different now, and that something different is the fact that he's the prophet, and you can see that change. I'm getting tingles just talking about it. It was really neat. So next, we have 2 new apostles. It's been a while since we've had a full quorum, so this is pretty neat. Elder Garrett W. Gong and Elder Ulysses Suarez. And a couple cool things. You can go to ldsliving.com, and they have some, 5 things you didn't know, or 5 things you should know, or 5 facts or something about each of them. And a couple that I picked out. Elder Gong was a special assistant in the United States State Department. He was also a special assistant to the ambassador of China. So he's a very well-respected person. And, I loved his talk recently. I don't remember all the details, but I remember thinking, hey, I like this guy. And then Elder Suarez is the first Latin American apostle. So that's pretty cool. His family joined when he was young, and, has been in the presidency of the 70s since 2013, I think. So it'll be really neat to hear from both of those more in the coming years. And I was telling my kids how cool this was, because these are apostles that they'll grow up with. They'll grow up and see them their entire growing up years. So they will be these 2 will be for my daughter and my son, kind of like Elder Uchtdorf and Elder Bednar are for me, because they were called my first conference on my mission. And so they've always held a special place for me, because they were the first apostles that were called after I joined the church. And, I have a special place in my heart for them. And my kids will have that too. My daughter is old enough to now to remember and to remember them being called. So now let's get into the big changes. This was a jam-packed, packed full of changes, exciting stuff, things adjusting. The first one was the announcement of the change with priesthood quorums, that high priests and elders will meet in one combined elders quorum in wards and branches. This is exciting. This is cool. I was just talking to a friend of mine who served as a bishop before I did, and he was the bishop in my ward when I joined the church, actually. And then, he and I were talking, because I was just released as bishop, and so we were talking about these changes and how those will affect things. And I think it's awesome. I think, there's some questions I have and some concerns, but overall, by and large, this is an exciting change, because the ability to have, especially not so much in bigger wards, I think it's beneficial there as well, of course, but, especially in like smaller branches and smaller wards, where you have a lot of new converts, a lot of people that aren't real versed in the gospel. And then you have a high priest group where you have former bishops and high councilmen, and being able to combine those and to get that experience, and to get these brethren that have had lots of experience to be able to interact more with young or men that are just coming into the Melchizedek priesthood, but also new members and people that need that. And also just from a home teaching standpoint, I was talking to this former bishop. He's the high priest group leader, or was. He's not going to be pretty soon. But he was talking about, and he and I had lots of conversations when I was the bishop and he was the high priest group leader, about home teaching, and how you have some that are home taught by the elders, and some that are taught by the high priest, and how it worked, and it worked well, but there was just a disconnect sometimes. And it's who's taught which family is these people get taught by, and I think this person would be taught better by a high priest, even though he's an elder, and there's all these things that I think this change really is going to help to alleviate. And I'm just super excited about it. I think it's going to be great. The only thing that I worry about, and it's not a worry that I think this is a bad thing, or it's a concern, I think it's just something that's in my mind that I wonder about, and I'm interested to see how it changes, is I've seen the value. I don't want this to become, and I don't have any say in what happens, but I don't want this to become where only former bishops or former high councilmen get called to be this elders quorum president, or be in that elders quorum presidency, because I think there's a lot of value now in the elders being able to step up and lead, and they need that. I've seen that time and time again, that those are leadership opportunities that they need, and they get the way it is now. So I hope that stays that way, and they still get those opportunities. And I'm sure there's ways that they'll make sure that happens. But that's something that I did think of as I was going through that. Now, ministering. Retiring home teaching and visiting teaching. Oh my gosh, what an amazing change this is. And I think it's great. I really do. There's a lot of joking around, and we'll see some of it, in some of the Twitter stake stuff we share here in a second. But the biggest thing I think is as I was listening to it and I was talking to my wife about it, one of the things I said is, the cool thing about this is it gets rid of the guilt, it gets rid of the formality, and it just, essentially what I heard was, this isn't a program. It's just what we do. This is just who we are. And that's what Elder Holland really hammered home. This is just who we are. Just minister to people. Just take care of them. We don't care how you do it. We don't care that you report it. We don't care that, and they do. They want reports. But, we don't care about the logistics of it. We just want to know that people are taken care of. We just want you to be their friend. We just want you to be there for them. Whether that's a text or a phone call or dropping by or watching a soccer game or going to a high school play, all of those things are ministering. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to just show up on the 31st of the month and feel like we've done our duty. And I think that's what this does. It gets back to the spirit of it and what we're supposed to be doing. And it also takes into account the 21st century and the ways that we can contact people, the ways that people like to be contacted. And so I think it's amazing. I think it's a fantastic change, and I'm super excited about it. Super excited to see how it changes things and how it just really takes us to the next level in being ministers and to serving one another and helping them in ways that they need to be helped. So along with that, there was something else I was going to say, and I just totally spaced it. But the final thing that I wanted to share is lots of temple announcements, including Russia and India. That is exciting. That's cool. My wife pointed out, I'd totally forgotten that just recently Russia had some issues where they weren't letting missionaries proselyte. And so to go from that to having a temple be announced in a yet to be determined city in Russia is pretty awesome. But here's one thing, and this is where we get into the not taking ourselves too seriously. Don't take this wrong. But as I'm listening to the temple announcements, and I think the first one, there was a little bit of a rumbling in the conference center when they announced India. There was a quite a bit of I think there was actually even cheering when they announced Layton, Utah, and when they announced India. And I looked at my wife and I said, we can cheer during conference now? Like, that's a thing? I was blown away because it just seems so weird to hear like cheering and shouting. But the cool thing about it was the way that President Nelson handled it. It was he just had a smile on his face, like, yes, this is exciting stuff. This is cool. This is something that we're looking forward to. But it was funny. It did make me laugh to think, wow, okay, so next week when I go to church, can I cheer if I like something? I mean, if my bishop announces that we're going to have a potluck the final week, can I go, woo, all right? Or can I not do that? So I thought that was funny. It was something that I don't think I'd ever seen in conference before, and it was kind of neat. So, all right, Mormons in the news. Let's move on to that. Mormons in the news. There was a lot. I mean, the news blew up this weekend because the church diversified with the new apostles. We have the first Latin American apostle. We have the first Asian American Asian American apostle. I'm always weird with that American thing because it's like, if they're not from here, they're not a hyphenated American, and so I always hesitate with that. I'm like, how do we say that? But, NPR had this big article. Let me pull it up here. Where it says, the Mormon church diversifies. And while I think that's cool, and I think it's great, and I think it's going to happen more and more as the church grows internationally, the fact of the matter is, and I kept coming back to this, that it's like, the Mormon, the way they frame this is, oh, they're keeping up with the times. But the fact of the matter is the church is led by revelation. And the Lord calls whom he calls. And, it kind of, I already feel like the Mormon church is diversified. Their second paragraph here is, the two men diversified the quorum of the 12 apostles, whose top leadership until today consisted solely of white men. One apostle, Dieter Uchtdorf, hails from Germany. They rank below the church president as counselors, acting as the core group of Mormon policy makers. And it just made, I get what they're saying. I totally get what they're saying. And diversity is an important thing. But to me, I feel like the church is super diversified. I mean, I feel like half, and I can't quantify this, so maybe I'm off by one or two or whatever, but it seems like every time I watch conference, there are more people with accents that are not American than there are without accents. And I know that's probably not exactly 50-50, but I feel like it's super diversified. I feel like we get people from Europe all the time. I feel like we get people from Central and South America, people from Asia, you know what, and from Australia and New Zealand and all these different places. And I think that's awesome. So to me, one, the first thing is the church is what the church is because it's led by revelation. The people that are called are the people that are called. I wholeheartedly believe that the people that are called to the 70 and the 12 and the first presidency are called by revelation. So they are who Heavenly Father wants them to be. So diversity doesn't really factor in for me, but I think it's super diversified. I think there's a ton. I mean, I was trying to find it, but they don't have it up on LDSorg yet. But President Oaks, I gotta fix that. I keep forgetting that. President Oaks made the comment that wasn't it like 40% of all the 70 are international. And that's fantastic. And he listed all the countries that they have 70s from. And I think that's awesome. And it's going to continue to go that way. And the church is going to continue to diversify because the church continues to grow and it continues to develop. And we're continuing, more and more countries that are newer in the gospel, that haven't had the gospel as long, are getting people that have been lifelong members or have went through leadership roles and have developed and came to a point where they can serve in those types of situations. And I think it's fantastic, and it's going to continue to become that way. But that was the big news over the weekend, was that the church is diversifying, and they've called in a Latin American apostle, and called an Asian American apostle. So those were funny. All right, so that was us in the news this week. Now let's go on to best of the Twitter stake. There are some really, really funny people, some really funny LDS people on Twitter, and I love watching it, especially conference. It's hilarious. Next conference, I'll do better. I came up with this idea of starting this last night. As I was finishing watching the last session, I texted a friend of mine and said, dude, we should do this. He said, hey, that's a cool idea. I'm like, we should do best of Twitter stake. That would be awesome. So I went back and I found some of them. There's definitely a ton of them I missed because they're back farther, and just the way Twitter works, they're gone. They're not gone, but my hope is that as you hear these and I tell you who these people are, that go back and read the rest of their tweets. Like, there's some funny stuff. Make sure you follow them. They're tweeting all through the year, and they have some really, really funny stuff with regards to the church. So let's share a couple of these. First one, these ladies are hilarious. The hashtag, or the Twitter handle is Sistas in Zion, Sistas in Zion, and the first one I want to share. This was hilarious. My friend John shared this with me. It's I'll just read it to you because it explains it. It says, please welcome to the pulpit the holy man with the righteous tan, the German who can give a sermon, your daily dose of #vitamin Dieter, Elder Uchtdorf. And then she says, me announcing Elder Uchtdorf if I was given one of my dream church callings of holy hype man for LDS conference. So that cracked me up. That was awesome. I can't say it the way that she does, and I'm sure it's even funnier if you could hear her say it, but I can imagine. The holy man with a righteous tan, the German who can give a sermon. That's awesome. All right, so that's the first one, Sistas in Zion. Another guy I follow that I thought this cracked me up, at LDS Bishop. He serves as a bishop in, I think, the UK. He said, somewhere there's a high priest home teaching district supervisor sobbing into their last first presidency ensign message. And that made me laugh because I was sitting in high priest a couple weeks ago, and there was this 15-minute conversation about the church discontinuing the first presidency message, and what are we going to do with home teaching and all this stuff, and you can see it all tying together now. But I agree, there is probably more than one high priest home teaching supervisor that's sobbing because they don't have that lesson anymore, and because they just lost their calling, because there's no more home teaching. Let's see. This one was awesome, not from a funny standpoint, but just an amazing, cool standpoint. Fox Carraway. If you're not following her, please do so. At 22 Al Fox is her handle, and if you don't know Al, I don't know her, but I follow her. She's a convert, and so that defines this a little bit. She said, I've never sustained a new prophet before, and it is electrifying. She said, I felt my soul jolt and dance within me as I watched his face as he was sustained. Tears in his eyes, mantle set, great humility, and love overpouring. And that was just cool. Like, as I read that, I felt that same thing. And as I sat in the solemn assembly, I felt that same thing, that electrifying, that jolt. And I've been through it once, but every single time it's an amazing experience. And so, Al, thanks for sharing that. Let's see here. Here's one that made me laugh, and you're not going to get the full view of it unless you see it. And so I'll make sure I share these with you. But this one, it's from Things Mormons Like, and it's at the Mormon Likes, and it's a picture of a husband and a wife laying in bed. The wife's kind of looking over at the husband, and the husband's kind of off in his own world, laying sideways, deep in thought. And it says, her, and then quotes, he's probably thinking about other girls. Him, quotes, what if I get called into an elders quorum presidency now? And that just made me laugh because it's so true. I guarantee you there's people thinking that, like, oh my gosh, how can I do that? What would that be like now? And everybody's looking for it. And then the final one that I'll share with you today is from probably my favorite person to follow on Twitter with regards to LDS stuff. It's the LDS state clerk, and he's hilarious, absolutely hilarious. I probably think he's hilarious because I've served as a state clerk, and so I get a lot of the humor. But he's at LDS state clerk, and he said, if President Nelson stands up at the end of this conference and says, April Fools, Mormon Twitter will self-destruct. And that is so true. They would just absolutely go crazy. And I saw somebody else, I didn't screenshot it, but I saw somebody else that basically said if there was anybody that would standing up and saying April Fools is something that President Nelson definitely would do. Like, that's something that's within his personality, and I think that's absolutely right. And so there's a few tweets. Make sure, like I said, go back and follow those people at LDS State Clerk, at the Mormon Likes, at 22 Al Fox, at LDS Bishop, and at Sisters in Zion. Sisters in Zion. Make sure you follow them. Go back and read all their tweets from this weekend. They're hilarious. You'll love them. And there's a lot of really good stuff too, like a lot of really good spiritual stuff that you'll find as well. And of course, the hashtag at LDS or hashtag LDSConf will get you a lot of those tweets as well, and a lot of other people that share some really cool ones. So that was awesome. And now for our brought to you by section, or our recommend section. I want to share a website that if you are not following it, you absolutely need to. Like, this is amazing. The founder of this website is a good friend of mine. I help him out with some stuff, and he is just a rock star, and it's leadinglds.org. Kurt Frankum is the founder of leadinglds.org. It's a nonprofit that's focused on training and helping new leaders, or old leaders, I guess. It doesn't matter if you're new or old, helping LDS leaders. And there's amazing stuff, whether you're a bishop or a Relief Society president or a primary president or a home teacher. Wait, never mind, not a home teacher, or a minister. He's got some amazing free resources. He's got an amazing podcast. He's always sharing really, really good stuff, and you definitely need to be following him. So again, that's leadinglds.org. Make sure you check him out. Make sure you follow him. Make sure you sign up for his list. He's got some awesome summits that he's done as far as teaching. He just finished up Teaching Saints, which was an unbelievable summit with tons of interviews with fantastic people of how to be a better teacher. So make sure you're following leadinglds.org. And Kurt, if you see this, I love what you do, man. I've learned so much. When I was a bishop, I used their resources all the time. I called the new Relief Society president. I gave her resources that Kurt had, so that she could have those. Same thing with a lot of my other leaders. I shared that information because it's that good. It's really, really good stuff, and you'll really like it. Whether you're in a leadership position now or you're not, or you're just a teacher, I'm a teacher now. That's what I get to do, which is pretty awesome. I love it. LeadingLDS.org has something for you, and you're going to absolutely love it. So again, remember, thank you for watching or listening. I'm super excited to share this with you. We'll get it dialed in as we get going, but remember, this is the place where we take the gospel seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously, because we don't have to. We can have fun. We can laugh at ourselves. We can laugh at our culture, and still take the gospel seriously. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we will talk to you soon.